an advertisement on your radio station from a company called Grid Solar. I would love to have that phone number so I can reach out to them with reference to solar panels being installed on my property.
Our listeners are aware and engaged, but more than that, they are loyal. When they hear empowering messages that uplift their community and help them live better lives, they respond. No medium reaches this coveted black audience like KBLA Talk 1580. So, hit us up today at smb@kbla1580.com and let us help you connect with our loyal listeners. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black under the bud.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, and delighted to have you with us in this hour of today's program. Conversation now, as promised, with University of Nottingham Professor Dr. Anika Nubia about the real history of black people in medieval Europe, and conversation about why Queen Charlotte's African roots may be as mythical as Robin Hood. He is one of the foremost researchers, thinkers, lecturers on the history of black folk, as it were, in Europe. And so we are honored to have him on this program today. Dr. Nubia, how are you today, sir?
Hello, how are you, sir? Can you hear me correctly?
I hear you well, and I'm doing well. If I complained, I'd be an ingrate, and I'm delighted to have you on the program from the UK. Thank you for your time. Let me start with this. For those here stateside who may not be familiar with your work, recognized, of course, around the globe. Take a couple minutes and just give the audience a good sense of what it is that you do, the focus of your research and your work.
Okay, so I am a researcher, a lecturer, and a presenter. My task is also as a teacher. Primarily, though, I am a student. I study, and I've been studying for more than 30 years. More than 35 years now, the history of African people, especially in the diaspora. I was originally trained as a lawyer, as a solicitor, a barrister, as they say in England. We have two professions. Then I switched from studying and teaching the law to studying and teaching history, although history was always my major, or my minor when it was, law was my major. I became a full-time historian sort of over the last sort of 20 odd years. And I worked for a long time in community type activities, working in community centers and what have you, and doing profiling work with universities. Then I switched from doing that community work to doing university work mostly, and less community work in terms of my activities. However, I've always kept a foot in community activity and community outreach, because obviously that's your home.
Yeah. Tell me more about why the switch from the law to history.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thanks for asking. So I studied the law because it was a field that my colleagues, the Eurocentric teachers that were around me, were telling me that I couldn't do. They said, you know, a black man doesn't study the law. Do sociology, do philosophy, do anything, but don't do the law. It's too hard for you. And so the law was something I said, well, you keep saying it's too hard, and you keep saying it's so difficult. There must be something in it that I need, that I want. So whatever people were saying is the thing that I should do, I'm going to probably be doing the opposite. Don't try and force me. Don't try and force me to be your slave. Don't try and force me to follow your crooked path. I'm going to go down my own path and then take responsibility for that as I go down it. So I studied the law first, and I started to teach law. Then I realized, actually, this is not so difficult. I qualified, I became a lawyer, then I became a historian afterwards. So I carry both of those sides of the humanities. And really, when I say the humanities, I'm talking about the fact that this is human relations. So philosophy, psychology, the classics, languages, history, law, they are all part of the humanities. And I think that by having an understanding of the humanities, we can understand more about our situation and what we need to do to get out of this situation. As we well know, it's the ancient Greeks that divided these things into boxes. And so, this is biology, this is physics, this is what have you. So I think that we shouldn't be foolish enough to fall into that Athenian trap. They did that because they wanted to make power out of their division. What we need to do is make power out of removing those divisions.
We had a fascinating conversation with another Brit on this program last week, as it turns out, Stephen Fry, a brilliant actor and I regard as a public intellectual. We talked about his new book. It's called Mythos, about the Greeks. And so here you come now with your indictment of the way they did things. We indicted them last week on this program in that conversation. I digress for now for those who heard that conversation last week. Let me ask this question. As a matter of fact, it would be unfair to ask you this and give you just 45 seconds to answer. Let me tee this up. And we'll let you get to it when we come forward. It's actually two parts. The first is, given your comment about humanity, I wonder what you make of, even in 2024, the lack of respect for the humanity and dignity of African people around the globe, the entire diaspora. How you read in 2024, given what you said earlier as a historian and why you became a historian, how you read this disrespect, this lack of regard for the humanity and dignity of African people around the globe. You can take it anywhere you want to take it. And then the other thing I want to get to is, and this is the sweet spot for me, getting into the real part of your work. Over these 35 years, what you have done is to research hundreds of thousands of documents that have allowed you to prove that these societies were far more diverse than heretofore postulated. And that's the sweet spot for me in this conversation, giving the audience a way in to see and how to respond to this notion that we showed up at a certain time when we were there long before. And that's been at the epicenter of the research and work that Dr. Nubia has done, making it clear that we were present, actively present in societies around the globe, certainly in Europe, long before people want to give us credit for having been there. It's going to be a great hour with Dr. Nubia when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You can even just with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains. Chevy Silverado, the first ever Silverado EV, Colorado and Tahoe have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. It's Chevy truck season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together let's drive. 0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
Sweet chocolate reward. Sweet chocolate reward.
This is not just the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat at Walgreens. This is the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat right after receiving all their vaccines in one trip. This is the sound of treating yourself. because you protected yourself.
Stop by or schedule both your flu and COVID-19 vaccines today and grab yourself a sweet treat while you're at it. Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline nasal spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Dr. Anika Nubia, as we talk about his focus on making it abundantly clear that in medieval societies, we were present long before people want to give us credit for showing up and doing what we did so well in so many different arenas of human endeavor. We'll get to that as we move forward in this conversation. But since you made this comment earlier, I want to come back and give you a chance to sort of unpack this. This notion of people in your life and in my life and the lives of so many listening and others around the globe who, even in 2024, don't see the respect for their humanity and their dignity and their capacity and their agency. How do you read that as a historian, even in 2024?
Okay, I mean, the first thing is thank you for asking. It's a great question. Equality, justice, and fairness is not a guarantee. Sometimes people think of history in a linear fashion, that the past was terrible and bad, and all the bad things happened in the past, and we are getting progressively better. This kind of notion we call modernism, a modernist notion, this idea that things are getting better automatically, and that somehow through the course of human history, we are moving to a bright, new, brave new world, you know, that kind of notion. History doesn't support such a notion. History doesn't support it. Unfortunately, worryingly, history suggests that in fact people's status is dependent on their capacity and their ability to make change for their lives. If they don't have the capacity, individuals that once had status can lose status. So we are full of, in history, of people actually losing their rights, losing their status, losing their position. These were people who before had position, had status. And we see that happening all over the world, that fluctuation. And we also see people actually being removed from the planet altogether because they don't know what's happening, because people think that there's surplus to requirement, because they can't get themselves together, because the nature of the aggressive nature of modern society sort of writes them out of history. They get sort of eradicated. That's what history teaches us. When the Native American peoples, the Nez Perez, the Lakota, these people who inhabited North America prior to 1492, these people lived in nations. Yes, they may have quarreled with each other, but they managed to subsist within nations. When the Sioux Army, after 1492, arrived in the United States of America, these people lost status, position, power. I go on. In South America, the people who inhabited South America, the various different peoples who inhabited South America, these people were coexisting in the land until the tsunami of the 15th century, and these people began to arrive in South America, these civilizations, and these people lost status and position. Moving to the continent of Asia, it's a very similar scenario. Moving to the continent of Africa, it's a very similar scenario. In Australasia, what we now call Australia and New Zealand, these people were living with the land for tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years until the 18th century. And when the tsunami of the 18th century, European colonization and imperialism, those people lost their status and their position. It is absolutely not guaranteed that your status and position will get better. In fact, what history tells you, if you don't know what on earth's going on, if you haven't got a clue, and a tsunami hits you, that's it.
Yeah.
So history doesn't say that we're moving towards a bright tomorrow. It actually suggests that your status and your position is determinable. It's variable. You have to be smart enough, wise enough, and connected enough to know what's going on and to be able to navigate that. And unfortunately, as horrible as it may sound, those people who are unable to do that, unable to understand what's going on, unconnected to the reality, those people fall by the side or are in fact eradicated.
As you were talking,
very much, yeah.
No. Finish your thought, please. Finish your point. I don't want to cut you off at all. Trust me.
So this is very much connected to the status of Africans in Europe. For tens of thousands of years, Africans have been moving throughout the continent of Europe, perhaps even for longer than that, but we can say for certain for tens of thousands of years, perhaps even earlier than that. We know for a fact that the continent of Africa is the birthplace for the entire human family. We know that. And that there have been several migrations, even before that 10,000 year period, where groups of people have moved out of the continent of Africa and have settled in other parts of the world. Even the Neanderthal people who inhabited Europe for hundreds of thousands of years came originally from people who came from the continent of Africa. So we know that the continent of Africa is the mother of the entire human family. But what we are talking about is the modern context, if we can say that, over the last sort of 4,000 or 5,000 years. The Africans who moved into the continent of Europe over the last 4,000 or 5,000 years and inhabited parts of the continent of Africa were eventually displaced through processes, either through racial recombination, if you believe that, which the jury's out on it, or through a process of integration and assimilation. These waves, these early Europeans, as it were eventually displaced. There have been continuous waves thereafter. There were Africans that came with the Roman army to Britain and other parts of Europe, traveled with them. There were Africans, of course, that came with Hannibal. Hannibal himself was an African. Yeah. And Africans invaded Spain, conquered large parts of Europe. There were a black African contingent amongst the Phoenician population of southern Europe. There were African people in the Colchis in Eastern Europe, originating from Kemet. There have been lots of groups of people present in the Roman times. If we're talking about Britannia, this is part of a diverse population mostly from southern Europe, but also including people of African descent. They are the groups who invaded Britannia in 43 AD, 55 BC and 43 AD. And for the next 300 or 400 years, people like Septimus Severus and others are the descendants of those people of African descent who were part of the Roman Empire. And those people settled on Hadrian's Wall and the Antonine Wall in modern day Scotland and in northern England. They settled in places like London. They settled in places like Colchester. And we have people like the Bengal Ivory lady, who was part of a African Roman middle class. These people were not all indentured servants or the lowest parts of society. Many of them are part of the higher echelons of society. So we know that even 2,000 years ago, these people form part of a constituent element of the European population.
I'm coming back to that, trust and believe. And I didn't want to interrupt you. You were on a roll and you were laying it out quite nicely, and this is why I wanted to have you on. For those who need to be disabused of the notion that we just showed up yesterday, that is not the case. And Professor Nubia is laying that out for us. Before I get back to that, though, and we continue forward, you said a couple of things I got to go back and pick up right quick. Again, you were moving so swiftly, I didn't want to jump in. But there are two things that I want to come back to right now, to this notion of modernism. When you were talking about modernism, as you were talking, my mind went to my hero, Martin Luther King Jr., This audience knows full well that I regard Dr. King as the greatest American this country has ever produced. That's my assessment. He is the greatest American that our country has ever produced. And King once said that change, to your notion of modernism, and I think you're right about this, King said that change does not gradually roll in on the wheels of inevitability. Change does not gradually roll in on the wheels of inevitability. King was right about that, and that's your point about modernism. I just wanted to link those two things together. The question I want to ask beyond that comment, when you talked about what it means to have capacity, and if you don't have capacity, then you get ultimately rendered invisible. I'm just paraphrasing what you said. If you don't have capacity, then ultimately you get rendered invisible, and you marched us all around the globe. All around the globe, you marched us and told the story of how people who lost their capacity ultimately ended up being rendered invisible, as did the record of their history and their contributions. To that point, what does it mean in real time? Speaking of modernism, what does it mean in this contemporary moment for us to have African peoples? What does it mean in this moment for us to have capacity?
Indeed, absolutely. I think you know. That's why you asked the question. I think you know. The simple situation is that because of hundreds of years over the last sort of since about at least the 17th century, last few hundred years, people of African descent have slipped further and further back in terms of their conceptual understanding. That doesn't mean that over the last 300 years there hasn't been resistance. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that over the last 300 years that there hasn't been a renaissance. There has, but we have slipped behind in terms of global dynamics, global understanding, and that sort of global vision that you see manifested in other people. And this puts us in a very difficult situation in terms of global affairs. Wherever you go in the world, and you look for the African, you find the African at the bottom. If you go to Britain, you find people of African descent, too many on welfare, at the bottom ladder of the social society. When you go to the prison systems and the mental institutions, you find people of African descent filling up the prisons and the mental institutions. When you go to France, see the same thing. When you go to Italy, see the same thing. When you go to Spain and Portugal, see the same thing. When you go to Germany, see the same thing. When you go to Canada, see the same thing. When you go to USA, see the same thing. When you go to Brazil, you see the same thing. When you go to Colombia, you see the same thing. You understand my point?
Yes.
This is a global phenomenon that can't be ignored. It's the reality of where we are. How do we change that? That's very difficult. The key thing is knowledge of history. And the most important thing is to commit yourself to study. It's nice for you to listen to this today. Very nice. Perhaps it's a start. It's not enough. Pick up your books. Pick up the books and read. Read even Van Sertima. Read Edward Scobie. Read Peter Fryer. Read these fantastic people that have written these great history books on the African diaspora and on Africans in particular in the continent of Africa. Because one needs to root this knowledge into the families of people of African descent so that we know what we are. In enslavement, the first thing that they did after taking away name and language was to take away people's history. It was to say to the slave, you have no history. There is no such thing as black history. You have no history. Just read this book, and it was the Bible. That's all you need to know. And that book doesn't talk about you either, we were told. So just read that, and that's all you need to know. You have no history. You are a slave. You had no history before you came here. You had no history before you came here. And that's what people believed. And that was part of the policy of making the slave. The slave was made by ripping away their history, which is why you find so many of our people, when they see a book They run away like Superman from Kryptonite.
Ah.
Like Superman from Kryptonite.
Yeah.
Like a book.
Yeah.
A book. Oh my God, not a book. You see the brother. You'll see a big, tough, masculine-looking brother, and you say, "Why did you read this book on Black history?" Book? Nah, man, book.
Yeah.
What are you talking about book for? Book. Book is like kryptonite to us. What a shame this is. What a shame. What a tragedy this is. Bearing in mind where we have come from. Where we have come from. In the continent of Africa, Africa was a center in the 14th, 15th, and 16th century for the literate culture of West Africa, for Timbuktu, for Songhai, for ancient Ghana, for Mali, right? These were places of literate cultures, of polyglot people that spoke and wrote in many different languages. These were sophisticated intellectual people who are unafraid of the written word. These are people known throughout the world as scholars. These are the same people and connected to the same people who people call the Moors who inhabited Spain and Portugal. Let
me ask you, right, 'cause I'm watching my time. I got about a minute and a half. We will continue when we come forward. But in the next 90 seconds, how did we become so complicit? Why did we become so scared?
It's not one thing. It's a process. You know, it's like if you've got a horse that's wild, that's free, and you want to tame it. It's not one thing that you do to make the horse tame. It's a process. And in the same way, when you take somebody whose spirit is free, whose spirit is intellectual, whose spirit is grounded in Mother Earth, and then you make them into something else, you know, it's how you make a slave. This is a process. And process meant taking away name, taking away language. So you didn't know what the hell you were speaking. And you didn't know where you came from. And then they took away history. So you were now what we call a human dwelling in a bubble of your own confusion. And then they tell you, look, you don't have any history. The only history you have is what starts from now.
Yeah.
And they tell you, you don't have any brothers and sisters outside of here. Nobody is like you. So many people in America, for example, I was talking to a Tuskegee Airman when I was in Detroit. This is about 10, 15 years ago.
Hold that thought one second. When we come forward, I want to hear the story about the Tuskegee Airmen that you were talking to here in the U.S. of A. His name is Dr. Anika Nubia. He's a University of Nottingham professor, and as you can tell, his specialty, his expertise is the real history of black folk. We'll get back to this story about Tuskegee and push from there when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. A dock collapse at Sapelo Island's Marsh Landing dock during a festival off the Georgia coast is under investigation. The incident, which occurred Saturday, resulted in 20 people falling into the water, with 7 fatalities reported. Voters in a number of states can vote early starting today for the November election. They include Texas, Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Connecticut. 3 people, including a 15-year-old boy, were hospitalized after being shot near the United Center on Chicago, Illinois' west side. The incident occurred last night as they were headed to a Lil Durk concert. Police report that a group on bikes attempted to rob them. Fortunately, there are no fatalities. And Lizzo and Usher joined Vice President Kamala Harris on the campaign trail over the weekend. Lizzo appeared with Harris at a Get Out the Vote event in Detroit, while Usher joined Harris later in Atlanta for a rally in Georgia. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers and New York Yankees in the World Series has a nice ring to it. For the first time since 1981, 2 of Major League Baseball's most celebrated franchises will meet up for the 12th time to decide the MLB championship. Game 1 is Friday at 4 p.m. at Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers eliminated the New York Mets in 6 games. The 10-5 win Sunday night gave the Dodgers 46 runs against the Mets, the most by any team in a postseason series in MLB history. The Rams are 2-4 after a 5-point win over the Raiders at SoFi. The defense limited the Raiders to just 5 field goals, no touchdowns. The Chargers are on Monday Night Football tonight. They're at Arizona to take on the Cardinals. 6 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. The New York Liberty won their first WNBA championship. They beat the Minnesota Lynx in overtime in the decisive Game 5. Next year, the WNBA Finals expands to 7 games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style,
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Moments like making my kids my famous meatballs mean a lot to me. But after being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, or MBC, which is breast cancer that has spread to other parts of the body, they mean even more. I take Ibrance, palbociclib.
Ibrance 125 milligram tablets with an aromatase inhibitor is for adults with HR-positive, HER2-negative MBC as the first hormonal-based therapy. Ask your doctor about Ibrance and visit Ibrance.com. Ibrance may cause low white blood cell counts that may lead to serious infections. Ibrance may cause severe inflammation of the lungs. Both of these can lead to death. Tell your doctor right away if you have new or worsening symptoms, including trouble breathing, shortness of breath, cough, or chest pain. Before taking Ibrance, tell your doctor if you have fever, chills, or other signs of infection, liver or kidney problems, are or plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding. Common side effects include low red blood cell and low platelet counts, infections, tiredness, nausea, sore mouth, abnormalities in liver blood tests, diarrhea, hair thinning or loss, vomiting, rash, and loss of appetite.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Sweet chocolate reward. Sweet chocolate reward.
This is not just the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat at Walgreens. This is the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat right after receiving all their vaccines in one trip. This is the sound of treating yourself. because you protected yourself.
Stop by or schedule both your flu and COVID-19 vaccines today and grab yourself a sweet treat while you're at it. Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline Nasal Spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed, as we continue our dialogue with renowned historian, noted historian, Dr. Anika Nubia, University of Nottingham professor. His expertise, in case you've just tuned in, you missed a great half hour, first of all, but check out the podcast when we post it later. But his expertise is the real history of black people, and I'm delighted to have him on this program in this hour. We ran up against the clock, Professor Nubia, and you were starting to tell us a story about America and some conversation with Tuskegee Airmen. Continue, please.
Yes, so thank you. This is some years ago. And so I was in Detroit about 15 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst I was there, I was living in a house with a family. And the family said, actually next door, we've got a Tuskegee Airman. I said, well, I've got to meet him. You know, I've got to meet this guy. So, because he didn't have a phone, so I was with 4 other people from the UK who were there. So we sort of knocked on his door, and he said, sorry, he can't talk to us. He can't talk to us. He can't talk to us. So I said, okay, he might be busy and what have you. So we went back inside, and we were getting ready to eat, actually. And about 10 minutes later, we got a knock on the door. I said, well, who's that? And it was him. He'd come from next door to the house. He said, oh, come down and sit down and eat with us, you know, talk with us. So he sat down. And so we were asking him, you know, so many questions about everything. You know, we asked him about the 761 Tank Battalion, you know, the Black Panthers, the original Black Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
We asked him about Marcus Garvey. He said Marcus Garvey was his hero. He said the people from New York and Detroit, that we always look to Marcus Garvey, not W.B. Du Bois, but Marcus Garvey. He's the one that makes sense to us, he said.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about his wartime experiences. He said he said that when he went to North Africa, when he was stationed in North Africa, he said he was shocked because he did not know that Africa had Africans in it, and that they looked like him. He didn't know that. He didn't know that. He didn't know that the people, that Africans from America had that connection to Africans from the continent, and I was thinking about that, the irony of that. That this is the motherland of the entire human family, but Africans in the diaspora don't want to connect with the continent that gave birth to the entire human race. I think there's an irony there. So I think that he wasn't an exception. I think that many people find it difficult to conceptualize, perhaps not these days, that Africans live in the continent of Africa, right? But it might be conceptually difficult for people to grasp that Africans are everywhere in the entire world. Everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. From Iceland and Greenland, you know, in the most northern parts of Europe, to New Zealand, everywhere, from north to south to east to west, you know, and I think it is sometimes conceptually difficult because I think, especially with the American context, no disrespect to the American people, of course, who are listening, but most of what you hear is about America. You know, the news that you hear is about America. And sometimes you may feel that whatever you're going through is only what is happening in America. And I'm sorry to tell you that what you're going through is very similar to what is happening to people of African descent all over the world. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's the truth. And you are not alone, and your experiences are not singular. In fact, they're part of a community of experiences and feelings that are happening everywhere. And in fact, the places where you don't hear from folk, where you don't hear what's going on, that's the place that you've got to be wondering what's happening to those people.
Yeah.
What has just happened to those people?
No, I hear you. As you lay out this history for us, I'm wrestling with one question, and again, no naivete here. But how does such a rich history of African peoples around the globe, as you've detailed quite nicely for us, quite thoroughly, how does that history itself, you are a historian, a world-renowned historian, how does that history of African peoples and the impact we've had around the globe, how does the history itself get rendered invisible? Why does it take someone like you to come along all these years later to push back on these popular perceptions that are wrong, to have to recontextualize these perceptions? How does all of that history get lost? And maybe lost is the wrong word. Maybe it didn't get lost. Maybe there's something else afoot here. You tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. There is design to the method of madness of eradication. There's something that was said to me, I remember when I was doing my PhD many years ago. When I started my PhD, it was the 1990s. It was the 1990s when I started my PhD. And my examiner, one of my examiners, who I won't name, said to me, we've looked at your PhD, we've looked at it, and we can't, we're having problems with it. I said, well, what problem are you having? He said, well, you keep talking about this African presence in medieval and sort of early Tudor history, you know, sort of from the 11th to the 16th century. And you keep talking about these people, and you said that these people aren't slaves, right? And you produced all this evidence that supports it. He said, but he said to me, but you can't say that academically. So if you are willing to change what you're writing there and say, look, that these people are enslaved, that they're slaves, and that, you know, the people that you found in the medieval Europe, or the people that you found in the 15th and the early 14th and early 16th century, that these people were slaves, you're willing to say that, we're going to give you a PhD. Otherwise, you know, we're going to send you back to do like another year's work. And I said,
hold that thought. I want to know what you said. I heard the chuckle. The entire audience heard the chuckle when they told him, if you change what you've written, in other words, if you lie, if you obscure the facts of all this research you have done, to tell the truth, we will give you your paper. We will give you your PhD. He chuckles in this conversation. I'm not sure he chuckled in that moment. I want to hear what Dr. Nubia said when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
You've got a Pepto predicament, moviegoer.
Hey, I can hear your stomach grumbling.
Sorry, I ate that entire tub of popcorn with extra butter.
You overdid it, and now your movie has turned into a blockbuster bellyache. Undo it with Pepto.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto chewables provide fast 5-symptom relief, so you can focus on the action on the big screen instead of in your stomach. When you overdo it, undo it with Pepto. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
All right, Dr. Nubia. Perhaps you laughed in that person's your examiner's face. Perhaps you did not, but I am curious to know what happened in that moment, sir, when they told you, when he told you, she told you, whoever this unnamed person is, that if you changed all your research and denied the truth of what you discovered, that you could get your PhD.
Now I need to just preface things so that you can understand. Now, I've been researching these people for decades. And when you go to the English Record Office, there are records from the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th century. And it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you're looking at the baptism records for a London parish, which is like a suburb,
mm-hmm.
and you're looking for an African in the parish, because the people are assimilated within the society, they're not in a separate quarter. You have to search every single record to find them. But sometimes, and this is a very strange thing, right? Sometimes the record speaks to you. So Hector, for example, if I take someone like Henry Anthony Jetto,
mm-hmm.
Henry Anthony Jetto is living in Holt, Worcestershire, but his record would speak to me. So I'm looking for this big document that's like 500 pages. And somehow I know to get to page 25. And as I'm looking down page 25, there is Henry Anthony Jetto.
Mm.
Sometimes, and then I'm looking through this, and I think, I've got to find, where do I look? And I turn to page 102, I find the person that I'm looking for. I find Maria Moriana. Or I'm looking through the record, this big document. And then I get to, and somehow I know how to get to page 42, and I find Deirdre Joanqua, an African prince.
This is the ancestor speaking to you, huh?
This is it, absolutely. So these people are speaking to me. These people are speaking to me through the records. And as I'm searching with thousands of thousands, they're talking to me, and they're telling me their story in the record. And as I was looking through these records and writing these records down and recording these records and compiling them, hundreds and hundreds of records of these people, I was just thinking about the fact that they want to be found, they want to be discovered, and they want somebody to tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
So when he asked me that question in my exam room, I could hear Henry Anthony Jetto speaking to me.
Lord Jesus.
I could hear Deirdre Joanqua speaking to me. I could hear Maria Moriana speaking to me. I could hear Pedro Fernandez speaking to me. I could hear these people, Nossa Ananaberry, speaking to me. I could hear all of these people of African descent, Bartholomew from 13th century Nottingham, talking to me, the Ipswich man, all these people speaking to me. There's no way with all of that community of conversation that I could possibly tell a lie about them.
So when we come forward in our remaining moments with Dr. Nubia, with all these ancestors speaking to him loudly and clearly, what did he say to the professor? Well, we do know that he got his PhD because I referred to him in this entire hour as Dr. Nubia. Indeed, he is. But what did he say? We'll get that when we wrap this conversation in a moment on Tavis Smile.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Febreze. So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Dr. Anika Nubia, a world-renowned historian whose work and witness is to tell the story of the real history of African peoples in the diaspora around the globe. I've got a tight 3 minutes left, Dr. Nubia. I'll give it all to you. Here's my exit question with 3 minutes to go. What did you say to this examiner in charge of the committee overseeing your PhD? And what is your advice to all the rest of us to ensure that our history is not rendered invisible? The last 3 minutes belong to you, sir.
Okay. So I could hear these voices speaking to me, the people that I've discovered, Simon Valencia, a needle maker working in Cheapside, and another unnamed African needle maker who had this art for making Spanish needles that nobody else could make. And I could hear all these voices, and there was no way that I could silence them, nor did I want to. So I said to him, and I actually did laugh. I said, even if you don't give me a PhD, and even if I never, ever, ever get one, I cannot tell a lie about these people. It would be easier for me to give up my life than do that. And then he said to me, well, it's unlikely you're going to get a PhD here. Well, you definitely won't get one here. And it's unlikely you'll get one anywhere. And he was wrong. It took me another 5 years. It took me another 5 years, but PhD I did get. And also, as I said, I teach at university. So there's a kind of acceptance that my work is important. But the point is, that if I sold out then I would have sold my soul then, and the legacy would be broken, and I couldn't do that. But there are many other people who face with that sort of challenge break. There are many other people who are involved in research, and I know some of them,
yes,
who discover the most fantastic things, but they're scared. They're scared about what they find. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to write it down. And they would go down to the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
To outsage something.
No. That would be tragic. And that is tragic for those who find themselves in that situation where they are too scared to share what they've discovered, to say what they see. Because if nobody ever tells the truth about the history, then, as we said earlier, the history gets rendered invisible. So I'm glad you navigated through that process, even though it took you another 5 years, and that is why you are the world-renowned Dr. Anika Nubia, who's, again, working witness at the University of Nottingham as a professor, is to research and to tell the true story, the real story, of the contribution of Africans around the globe. Dr. Nubia, good to have you on, sir. All the best to you. Thank you for this 1 hour. I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica,